I have an interview where we do not talk about Nelson Chamisa. Number one, Nelson Chamisa is not God.
Greetings, Zimbabwe, and welcome to Power Talk once more. My name is Mwari, the host. Today on Power Talk, we host a Zimbabwean opposition politician and somewhat of a maverick figure in the political arena, if you may want to say, my sister, Linda Masarira. Linda, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think maybe I should give you a point of correction.
Right.
I do not identify as an opposition political party leader. I identify as an alternative political party leader. We exist to proffer the alternatives until we get into power. The moment we speak about opposition, we lose focus on what exactly we're supposed to be doing and eventually exist just to oppose even good policies that can benefit the people of Zimbabwe.
Okay, perfect. There you have it, Zimbabwe. She is the alternative, or perhaps I would say lead. Her political party is the alternative. Let's get straight into it, Sister Linda. Maybe let's talk about firstly your political career, as in how did you become a politician and why?
I think labor injustice and gender injustice catapulted me into politics. I'm one person who believes in quality, having understood our own traditional value systems and how revered a woman was, and how the Eurocentric values came in and distorted the true value of an African woman, and the levels of misogyny I see around, the injustices against the girl child and women at the workplace, at universities, at colleges, the general disrespect for women in our streets, in our communities and societies. That alone actually told me that something needs to be done to restore the true identity of the African woman. Secondly, when I started working, I realized that to a certain extent, it seems to be a curse to be born a woman, because you have to work twice, thrice, 5 times as hard as the male figure for you to get recognition, for you to be appreciated, for you to get a promotion. Most women actually have to go through a lot of sexual harassment, abuse, you name it, just for them to be able to get a position that they're actually qualified to do, or that they have more meritocracy than the other male figures. So you'll find that it has never been easy for the women, and that when it comes to labor injustice as well, we go to the poor salaries that everyone is getting. Now we just speak about every person, whether it's male or female. It is a struggle these days just to be employed. You're just going there that you at least get something, and that's not exactly what it's supposed to be. Look at the peanuts that pensioners are getting. There is no respect whatsoever for the worker in this country, and it seems like government, business owners, companies have forgotten that their success comes from the very same workers that they continue to abuse and manipulate. And we decided to restore the labor movement in this country after MDC lost focus and mandate of representing the workers who were the backbone at inception. So we are trying to reorganize the labor movement to ensure that labor justice becomes a reality. Dignified salaries are actually given to workers, dignified pensions are given to pensioners, and that all vendors in the informal structure are also given a certain level of dignity as they do their work, because every Zimbabwean has got a right to work, a right to wealth creation, and vendors should not be vilified for just trying to make a living in a country that has got no jobs.
Right. You spoke about reorganizing the labor sphere, and that the MDC lost focus. But what's your relationship with labor bodies like ZCTU and others?
We've got a good working relationship with the ZCTU and many other workers' unions, and we're just trying to find our footing on how we can work together, collaborate efforts to be able to have one consolidated voice to speak out about the gender and labor injustices in different workplaces. We have seen a lot of cases of sexual harassment, especially in the journalism fraternity. A lot of stories that came out earlier this year or late last year at ZBC and other media houses. We've had a lot of abuse of women in different sectors of the economy, and we feel that it is time for us as women as well to be able to speak with one voice against sexual abuse and sexual harassment at the workplace. And we are also trying to work so hard to ensure that every Zimbabwean worker who goes to work has got a decent salary that can ensure sustained livelihoods and also ensure that they can take care of themselves and their children.
So what can we say is the difference between LEAD, the political party that you lead, and other opposition parties? Say we've got the CCC, MDC, and a whole host of others. What is the major difference between you, your party, and those?
The major difference about LEAD is we just do not back or hail insults. We just don't do that. That's why I say we're not opposition. On every policy that we do not agree with, we profile the alternative. And when we profile the alternative, we share with the incumbent. When we share with the incumbent, we always make sure that we make a follow-up. Because at the end of the day, being a political party does not mean that you're just supposed to make noise. You're also supposed to show your capacity on what you are able to do. I'll give you an example. When ZimSec raised the examination fees, was it 2 or 3 years ago? We did advocacy work as Labour Economists and African Democrats. We wrote to ZimSec, we wrote to the Minister of Education, we had several meetings until government agreed to subsidize our examination fees. We did that. That is the advocacy work that we did. And every Zimbabwean right now is enjoying subsidized examination fees for their children in primary and secondary education because we did that advocacy. And these are untold stories because our journalists thrive on brown envelopes, they thrive on negative stories, they do not want to report the positives that would have been done. We'll give another example of a time when civic society organizations in Zimbabwe were pushing for that bill to have 12-year-olds get access to sexual and reproductive health without their parents. And we wrote a petition to Parliament and it succeeded. It was stopped. We have done a lot of things and we continue to interrogate policies. We continue to profile policies. And just recently we have a case against the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. We're speaking about day-to-day issues that are affecting Zimbabweans. But sometimes Zimbabweans don't pay attention because they are so fixated in culties and politics, politics of populism, that they do not pay attention to those people who are actually working hard day in and day out to make sure that they've got comfortable livelihoods, that are trying to make sure that they've got sustained livelihoods. This case that I actually put at the High Court is speaking to every Zimbabwean struggle. The ordinary Zimbabwean who has got no access to US dollar, the ordinary Zimbabwean who has got no way to buy the US dollar because it is now a crime to go to the money changers to buy USD. It's now a crime for you to even want to look for a money changer to buy the USD. Yet our fuel is priced in USD. We all need to fuel up our cars and a whole lot of things that affect us on a day-to-day basis like rentals, etc. But people are not paying attention. I don't know what is wrong with my fellow countrymen, but I think it is time that we start interrogating all political parties. What have they done for us? Are they sincere in alleviating poverty in Zimbabwe? Are they sincere in seeing the ordinary Zimbabwean livelihood uplifted? These are the things that people should look into when they interrogate who to vote for and who has the capacity to give them a better life.
But if perhaps you may go a bit more into this lawsuit that is at the High Court that you filed. What exactly is the crux of the matter that you took to court?
The crux of the matter is we need a declaratory order in the mandamus for all banks, all bureau de changes, to be able to sell USD to every Zimbabwean. The situation we have right now, if you walk into Homelink, they'll tell you that they can only give USD to a certain grouping of people, maybe who want Forex for outside payment, to bring in invoices, etc, etc. You go into Bureau de Changes, they'll tell you the same thing. Go to your own bank. If it's not your salary that goes into your account that you want to withdraw, you cannot buy USD from the bank.
True.
And that makes life very difficult. So at the end of the day, I, being an ordinary Zimbabwean who's also facing these challenges and is fed up and tired, I decided to make sure that we all have access to USD from our banks. If then it goes the other way around and they say they've got no capacity, it means that they'll have to de-dollarize. We can't keep on using a currency that is not working, that is always in short supply, that is making people suffer, that is entrenching poverty, that is entrenching inequalities and widening the gap between the wealthy and the poor.
Maybe let's go into lead a bit. Can you give us a brief background, or perhaps an organogram of how lead is constructed? You are the president. Who else is who within the party in terms of structures?
Okay, in Labour Economic South African Democrats, we've got a full structure has got 35 people,
Right.
and the executive has got 11 people.
Right.
It's the president, the vice president, the national chairperson, the vice chairperson, the secretary general, the deputy secretary general, the treasurer, the organizing secretary, the deputy organizing secretary, secretary for elections, the vice secretary for international relations, and the vice secretary for security, and the vice secretary for legal affairs, the vice secretary for people with disabilities, secretary for pensioners, secretary for war veterans, secretary for land, secretary for health, secretary for education, secretary. We've got almost a secretary for everything that affects every person's day-to-day livelihood, and because we want to be inclusive.
Right.
We want to incorporate everyone. We want everyone to feel at home.
Right.
So we've made sure that almost every sector of the economy is also covered in our secretariat. So we've got the National Executive Council, which runs the party. After that, we've got the National Working Council, where we've got our secretariat and our shadow ministers. And then we've got the National Conference, which comprises the provincial leadership and the National Working Council.
Right.
Those are our structures that cascade down right up to the branches.
Right, but it would seem you are the most visible. Maybe it's because you're the president, but I've not really encountered a lot of these officials, perhaps even online, in the press, even on the streets, say on the campaign trail. How come you seem to be the only one who is visible from lead?
I am visible in the media because I'm the visionary. I know where we are coming from and where we are going. And we've got a different way that we are mobilizing, and a soldier that goes to war does not necessarily open their armpits and say this is how we're doing things.
Right.
Because you definitely have your strategy disrupted. But I must say that our strategy is working. We're gaining ground on a daily basis. We are mostly working in rural areas because we feel that that is an untapped area where people have been conditioned to think ZANU-PF, but we want to give them an alternative. We want them to see that politics goes beyond ZANU-PF, and for us that's politics.
Right.
We're not going to waste our time trying to fight with other opposition political parties in the urban areas where people have clearly said we will vote for a dog so long it belongs to this particular person. We are not going to be having time to convince those people. We have decided to go rural, and our strategy is working. They are understanding us, they are accepting us and what we stand for.
Right, and looking at the previous elections in 2023, I remember you had trouble registering to run because of the issue of currency, and you had a bit of a protest, but it was not really put out there by us in the media for some reason. We were too fixated on other things, but maybe you can explain a bit on the protest that you put out during that time.
I was really infuriated with the way Zimbabwe Electoral Commission refused local currency payments, considering that our own local currency is actually legal tender. And afterwards, I tried to speak out a lot about how ZEC had actually violated the laws of this land, even took the case to court, even though the courts dragged with the case until the last day where they just gave us a ruling of one sentence and did not give us the full ruling. And one would have expected that the media was going to make a lot of noise about it, but they ignored it because they also fixated in cultic politics, cultic populist politics, to the extent that they do not notice things that are important, things that are critical, things that will also affect us. Because if we had succeeded in winning that case, it was going to be a case that we could use tomorrow. If you go to the hospital and they don't want to accept local currency,
right,
we would say, but Linda Masarira won that case. This is legal tender.
Right.
But right now, if you do not have money and the hospital is asking for USD, your relative will die. Because we do not pay attention to things that affect us. We do not pay attention to important things. Individualism is costing us as a nation. People look at that. But that person that you're focusing on is living a very comfortable life, driving latest vehicles, has got solar, kumbakwake, borehole and everything, and life is comfortable for that particular person. We need to change the approach and the way we do things in this country. We need one shared common national vision. Who are we as Zimbabweans? What do we want to aspire to be? What is the type of leader that we want? What is it that we want to achieve collectively as a nation? We are failing to do that because everyone is looking for a messiah. There is no messiah under the sun. We will never have a messiah, my brother. Right. What we will have are leaders who are team players, who can work with other people to change our status quo. But as long as we're believing that an individual can save Zimbabwe, drama.
Wow.
Drama.
Right. And you used to be very close with, I would say, the main opposition in courts, where you were, I think at one point you were a member of the MDC. Right. And I also remember you once got arrested and spent quite a bit of time in jail. And maybe can you explain a bit about that scenario? I mean, what happened and why you spent so much time in jail, and eventually how that experience shaped you politically?
I was arrested on the 5th of July 2016.
Right.
In Mfakose. I was actually on my way to the US Independence Day celebrations. I was accused of throwing stones and blocking roads and whatever. And when I got arrested, all the other people who were arrested with me were given bail. I wasn't given bail because they said I had some cases where I not attended court in Mwari, I had outstanding bail, they would not give me bail. It was a back and forth issue. But for me, I took it as a way of just trying to punish a person or to fix a person, even though I eventually got the bail through High Court after 8-9 days. And I think for me that was a point of reflection on everything wrong with the system in this country. That everyone wants to speak out against injustices will be closed out. The silencing of dissenting voices, the silencing of everyone who wants to speak out and say this is wrong. Because when I got to the Tsungirirai female remand prison, the food that was being consumed there was not even fit for human consumption. Until I led a protest again there, where we were demanding for proper food to be availed. Yes, to be availed to all prisoners, because donations would come, but the prison guards would steal the food and go with it to their houses. And then I was removed from the female prison and I was put in solitary confinement in the male prison, where I was always in leg irons. I hardly saw the sun except the days that I was going to court. And I think the time they put me into solitary confinement, they wanted to break me, but I wouldn't be broken. And now that I reflect on that time, I think it made me stone-hearted. Nothing can ever shake me right now. No matter what you do to me, I can't break. I reached a breaking point and didn't break. And I don't think that anything in this life can ever break me. Because the time I was supposed to break down, I didn't break down. I had God by my side. And He became my solace and my strength. And to date, I know with Musikavan, wherever I am, is right there with me.
And if I may sort of diverge a bit from our topic and speak about solitary confinement, a lot of people would not have gone to prison. We see it on TV and we only hear about it, but what is the difference between solitary confinement and normal general prison with the rest of the others, and why is it a more severe form of punishment than the general prison conditions?
In solitary confinement, you're on your own. It's a very small, dingy space. I mean, there's just this concrete slab that can just fit a human body. You can't turn. You have to wake up and turn if you want to sleep. And there's very limited space, and at that other corner there's your pit latrine, and you're given water once a day to flush. And there's no lighting.
Wow.
So it's dark 24 hours. during the day, because of maybe the air fans and whatever, there's a little bit of light that comes in.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit of light that you tell that this is daytime. And when it's during the night, it's creepy. A lot of people died in those cells. There's a lot of sounds that come in. You basically have got no access to talk to anyone. You're just by yourself, and the prison guard who's guarding you will be in a cell right in front of you.
Yeah, that sounds a very difficult environment. Yes. So getting back to the topic, you were a member of the MDC, you were arrested, you stayed in prison for a long time, and there's a huge campaign that was led outside for your bail, for your freedom. And one of the people who led that call or that charge was Nelson Chamisa.
It was Patson Zamara. Let's not distort history. Patson Zamara, because when I got out of prison, I went back on social media, looked at how even the call started. Patson Zamara made noise that you made a lot of noise going to the courts when Mwari was in prison. Why are we not doing the same for Linda, who has stayed for more than 3 weeks in prison? It was Patson Zamara. Let us not distort history. Nelson Chamisa never led a call for protests for solidarity for me. He never did. I only saw Chamisa once when I was in prison, during the 89 days I was in prison. That is the day he came to court and just took a picture of me and put it on Twitter. That was the only day I saw him.
Okay, thank you for the correction. I would have supposed that I think I would remember a few times that he would call for your release. But nonetheless,
I am not aware of that because I was behind bars.
Right.
Maybe did it in some space, but I personally took time to look at people who called for solidarity, and most of them I went and thanked them personally.
Right, and a lot of supporters of Nelson Chamisa in the main opposition, you can say Triple C or former Triple C and MDC perhaps, seem to think that actually they accuse you of hating Nelson Chamisa. So perhaps if I might ask in front of Zimbabwe, like, why
can we ever have an interview where we do not talk about Nelson Chamisa? Number one, Nelson Chamisa is not God. Number two, every interview I have, people want to draw me to speak about Chamisa, who's got nothing to do with my brand. Number three, everything that I ever did from 2018 was to tell the world the truth about the character of Nelson Chamisa. And everything I said from 2018 came to pass, and they saw everything that I said, and no one ever came back to say, Linda, sorry, we insulted you, we ridiculed you, we called you names, we said you hate Chamisa. Everything that I said came to pass. Just because Zimbabweans don't pay attention to detail and they become clouded with their favorite politicians, they say anyone who does not subscribe to their politics hates them. I've got no reason to hate Chamisa. Chamisa is a brother to me. When we meet, we talk, we laugh, and we share stories. Right. So I will not be drawn to this hate whatever, because I am telling the world the truth and about the weaknesses of a particular person. And I will still maintain, because you've asked me, we can never have a religious fanatic as a political leader or a president of a country. Period. I'll never change my stance on that.
And another sort of accusation that is leveled against you by again people who are in the opposition or alternative, as it were, they say you seem to have caused it up to ZANU-PF. They seem to think you probably are now a whole lot more friendlier towards it than you used to be at the point where you arrested, for example. You see, they seem to think you have changed. Can you say you have changed? You are now friends with ZANU-PF, or perhaps are you now more amenable to the ruling party? Can you shed light on that?
I think earlier on there's a point that I raised, that Zimbabweans think that when you're opposition, every time you open your mouth to speak about current affairs, you have to insult the ruling party. To them, that's politics.
Right.
To them, that's leadership. When we formed LEAD, we interrogated on whether the insults that have been thrown at ZANU-PF since 1999 yielded any positive results for any Zimbabwean. They never did. So why should we copy a practice that has never changed anything, that has been used by the so-called main opposition? We came up with our own way of doing things. which is being the alternative, interrogating policies, challenging where we think is not benefiting the ordinary Zimbabwean, and we've got a lot of success stories. We're going to document this. And at the end of the day, Zimbabweans are going to realize that the way we've been doing politics is far much better than the way the so-called main opposition has been doing politics in this country.
And you're on record as being, again, apologies, I'll use opposition again, the only opposition leader who challenged the coup of 2017. Yes. How was that process and how was the outcome?
The process was hectic because every lawyer in this country refused to help me, including the godfathers of opposition. They were telling you no one was prepared to help me with that case, except one lawyer from South Africa who came and flew here, and we did the paperwork together until we filed. After we filed, the papers were said to have disappeared a month later. We struggled to locate them, and 3 months later we heard that I lost the case. We tried to interrogate it, but we realized is Remepo, and later on the Chief Justice said it was constitutional. But I still believe a blunder was done, and it is a constitutional blunder that will cost us for years to come. Constitutionalism should always reign first, but we're in trouble because there is selective application of the Constitution in Zimbabwe. People use sections of the Constitution that they think are applicable to them at a particular time, but that will come to haunt us one day.
Right. And speaking on the Constitution, we've had talk of ED perhaps harboring ambitions to amend the Constitution so that he can have a third term, and ZANU-PF functionaries have been chanting those slogans all over the place. What's LEAD's position in regard to that alleged constitutional amendment?
And once again, I think we love being diverted by ZANU-PF issues a lot. I would rather stand by what I heard Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa saying with his own mouth, that he's not seeking a third term. I think it is only proper for us to start commenting when he speaks with his own mouth that he's seeking a third term. We spend most of our time wasting time on what ZANU-PF supporters are saying, instead of focusing on fixing our own livelihoods and things that are affecting us as ordinary people. Mnangagwa is still on record saying he's not seeking re-election on a third term.
Yes.
Let's wait for him to say that he now wants a third term, then we'll start talking about it. But in as much as I know, it's not easy to change that particular clause without a referendum.
Right. And if it were to happen, do you think he would win that referendum? Just as a commentator, perhaps?
I don't know. Zimbabweans are very funny people. I'm being honest. In 2017, we knew that we had so many white people in Zimbabwe, but we saw them in the streets of Zimbabwe. We saw everyone in the streets of Zimbabwe. Even those who did not like the general and ED, they were all holding placards and dancing. So, with the Zimbabweans, you never know.
Right. Fair enough. And let's get back to LEAD, right? What is the fundamental or the blueprint, perhaps, of LEAD's economic policy? We know ZANU-PF is a Zim asset, they have MDS1, and Vision 2030. What's LEAD's primary or perhaps the blueprint for the economy?
Ours is called SEED. It's called Sustainable Economic Empowerment and Development. We are a political party that believes in wealth creation for every Zimbabwean. Opportunities should be availed for every Zimbabwean, regardless of class in society, regardless of which political party they are coming from. And we believe that there's no Zimbabwean who's supposed to be poor. And we've been working a lot on changing the governance system. We're about to finish our document called the Nimbe Governance System, where we're talking about letting go of the systems we adopted from the Swiss regime, which work against us. They are oppressive, they are repressive, they are suppressive. They were created for white capital monopoly. That is why anyone who goes into government right now comes out of government rich. The system was created for that, but no one pays attention to that. And we are saying with Nimbe, Pachivanu Kwenzi, Gutsa Rushinji, hakuna mhuri inofana kuvata nezhara. Kana kwako iwe hanzvadzi, kusina mombe. Svondo rouya, mombe dzese dzemudunhu dzouya kwako. Tobika mangai head up. Touya nemombe tokurimira. Mhuri yako aisara chichava. Ndo zvatiri kutaura selindi. Tine gold, tine lithium, tine diamonds, we've got iron, we've got copper, we've got so many minerals that there is no single Zimbabwean who should be lacking. Our soil is very fertile, underutilized, and distributed on partisan lines. That should never happen in any country. When people voted for Mnangagwa to be the president of this country, he ceased to be the president of ZANU-PF. He should look at himself as the president of Zimbabwe and avail opportunities for every Zimbabwean. And we are saying as lead, that is the approach that we'll take. No one should even go and buy food in South Africa. We are actually supposed to be exporting food to other countries, but we are not organized. We go into the energy sector. We've got a lot of gas in this country, a lot of sunshine. If the Chivayos of this world had not played with the Gwanda project, I don't think we'd be having so many power cuts that we're having. Industry will not function without energy. Our economy will not stabilize without energy. But what are we doing about it? No one is paying attention to it. So I would go on and on about what SEED is all about, but it is all about every Zimbabwean having an opportunity to create wealth, every Zimbabwean being able to gain from the natural resources in this country. We are saying that because I am well traveled, I've been to other countries. I'll give you an example of a country like Qatar. People would want to argue Qatar is a small country, but there are no Qatari citizens that go to work. Most of the people there who work are foreigners. Right. The Qatari citizens wait for their bank accounts to be fed with money every month and from the government, from the dividends of oil. If Zimbabwe was organized, I always give an example of the 15 billion that went missing. Our government could have avoided to pay every adult Zimbabwean at that particular time 1,500 USD into their own accounts. But no one does that because we're too individualistic, greedy, corrupt, insensitive, kana usina ahuna. Iwewe chayano kuna utambota for papa pako but mwana wamai wako mningina wako achitambura kuira mshika every day achifamba kama nikizani vanhu, but you cannot take a wonder fit ka usoshada mningina wangu chiboshandisa. Tine error as Zimbabweans. And whatever we want to work on as a political party, our message to every Zimbabwean is saying, let's start self-correcting at micro level. Kumba. Tesa tikatanga tagonogadzirisa kubva chikugara. We'll find it when we go up there. Things will be far much better. If we start loving each other and stop being greedy at home, it will be easier for us to have a love revolution at top. Leaders who can share the national cake with every Zimbabwean.
Very, 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 very strong words right there. Very, very strong. And coming back to the issue of elections, I remember in year 2022 when we held our by-elections, that was March 26, right? I remember you voted with your husband, right?
No, I didn't. Social media said I voted with him.
Yeah, so the report was that Linda went to
the
polling station and then she only got one vote, but she had gone with her husband. So people were wondering now, if Linda and her husband go to vote and she gets one vote.
The problem we have in Zimbabwe, I'm sitting with a journalist who asked me unverified claims and said a report was saying my husband votes in Bulawayo in Kaujipaki. Right. That is where he's registered to vote.
Right. So he never participated in the central
He just
elections.
drove me there.
Right.
And he was parked outside. I went on my own to vote.
Right.
We thrive on rumors, on makua. We love makua, Zimbabweans. And we take makua and cook them, put the karinga and whatever and make them juicy. We love sensationalizing issues. But when it comes to real issues that affect us, we are nowhere to be found.
Yeah, it was a very, very interesting story, but now that you've clarified it...
I've clarified it so many times, but I keep on getting the same question asked.
So in terms of leads penetration in the rural areas, you say it is going very well.
Very well.
But we all know that ZANU-PF seems to have a monopoly on the rural areas. And also, ZANU-PF, this is on record, we all know that ZANU-PF can be a violent party when it suits its needs or when it's threatened. Are you not afraid of exposing both your supporters as well as your officials to violence by ZANU-PF elements?
Before this interview started, my brother, I told you in the Nedari.
Right. Right.
I am not ashamed of who I am as a Russian.
Right.
Kana iwo vakusviti vari kutonga nhasi nguva yavaipinda mumareserva nguva yaSmith maisapindika but vaipinda. Ini ndine dare, imi mese muchita mupindike, vana chiposi vachita mupindike, ini ndiri kumupinda nemasapota angu. And masapota angu vari kunzwisisa dare riri pamberi pedu ratiri kufanirwa kusadzikisa sevana vanyamuno. We have suffered enough. We will not continue to suffer. Tichazadzikisa dare ratakapiwa namusikavanhu tisadzikise. Vandinofamba navo vese vanorinzwisisa dare iri and vanofamba mugware redare. Kana muchinge makutungamirirwa nenyika dzimwe hakuna chinokona.
Strong. You also spoke off camera before the interview. You spoke about a cultural revolution that seems to be going on in Africa as well as Zimbabwe, of course. Maybe can you speak a bit on that and where lead and you personally are in terms of pushing that cultural revolution? Okay,
as lead, we are in the process of rebranding our party. Very soon it will be called in Zimbabwe, and we are in the process as well of correcting some parts of our ideology so that it aligns to the new vision. It's not entirely new, but there's some things that we're going to be taking away from it that are no longer relevant to the refined vision that we now have for this country. And I was also explaining how a lot of family bloodlines are now converging in their different spaces. We also have the Mwari clan here in Harare. They're demanding their chieftaincy, and it's something that is going to happen anytime soon. We're going to be seeing the installation of Chief Harare. We've got the Roshi Empire that has now taken full throttle, that are also demanding their kingship for the Roshi Empire. We're converging the descendants of Chagamire Dombo and Mtinima. And I'm loving the vibe, I'm loving everything that is happening. We have seen a lot of cultural organizations that are popping up in different spaces. People now understand who they are, where they're coming from, and what needs to be done. And this is not only happening in Zimbabwe. Africans are also searching. They're looking for themselves. They want to know who they are. They want the distorted African history to be corrected. And I've got no doubt that once we reconnect with who we are spiritually, we will be able to conquer all the vices that were left by the white person in Africa, not only in Zimbabwe. A lot of people don't ask these questions. Why did the colonizer take the heads of our ancestors and put them in their museums as trophies?
Right.
Why did they take things that were used to worship, Chimbo, Mbia, what, and put in their own museums? Not only in Zimbabwe, in all African countries. They were trying to disconnect us from our spirituality, trying to disconnect us from our ancestors. When you go to the Bible itself, in the New Testament, it tells you about the genealogy of Jesus first. Because your genealogy matters for the success in your own life.
Right.
But some churches will tell you that your ancestors are demonic. And you'll find yourself worshipping the God of Abraham, the God of David, the God of Israel. That's a conversation for another day. I won't have it right now. People just need to connect with who they are and enjoy the fruits and the blessings that come from God, and knowing just who you are and appreciating those who came before you for being there so that you are there.
Right. And what's the likelihood that the current government, not necessarily like their individuality, but as in the system, would accede or perhaps accept this idea of a restoration of, say, the Roge monarchy or the Roge empire, like you put it? And how would we know who is supposed to be the king? I'm a Roge myself, I'm a Moyo, you are a Moyo, Rose as well. How do we then know who is supposed to be the king or the Mutapa or the Changalire? How is that determined?
You know, I don't know whether to laugh or to cry. It hurts finding a grown-up old man like you not even understanding or appreciating how a king was installed in our own blood lineage. Shikiro ndonza iuya dzototi ushe wakupinda mburi yakati. Saka Shikiro dzinotoziva kuti ushe panguva ino huri mumhuri yakati. Enzei zvozoti nguridzwa ushe ndeucho. Dambudziko yoti greediness and selfishness ndozoita kuti vamwe vade kupiringa nekudai so.
Exactly.
That is why even right now we've got so many chiefs right now from Zimbabwe. Chero katerera wakatsamwena waudza vasina kugadzwa nemasvikiro ndosaka zvinhu zvisingafambi kumatunheni. Kana wakugara hako ushe wakusina kugadzwa nesvikiro, your day of reckoning is coming. And I'm unapologetic about that. Ndinoda kugara ushe usiri hwangu ndokuti ndakatogara mhou hwangu kumusha kwangu. A lot of chiefs, the real chiefs, vakatorerwa umambo nguva yaSmith. Smith achida kuisa mapuppets ake. And to date, most of those puppet chiefs dzemungava dzaSmith dzakaramba dzine ushayiwo kusvika nhasi. Madzimambo chaiwo pamachief esatino muno akagadzwa nesvikiro kana 40% asviki.
So the vast majority are basically imposters, as you would want, as you may want to say. And you think it's the reason why perhaps the country is not really moving forward in terms of the economy and the general way of living, our standard of living perhaps?
I will go back to the adopted systems that are not ours. Haazi. Vanakamboseka Kepo Mohadi, the VP, they did not tell us what to do with their systems. He was correct.
Right.
It's not ours. Why don't we redefine the systems? Kuva 1995 ichimopiwa zvemapolisi asingashande neIMF neBretton Woods. Nanhasi chero tikanyora economic policy tomhanya nayo ikoko. Do we stay there? Do we even need their validation? And what then is sovereignty? How then do we say we're even a sovereign state? When you always need validation, we have written this. Is it okay? How do we do this? With the vast mineral resources we have in this country, do we even need to be borrowing money from those countries? Why are we running with the begging bowls to the west, to the east, like headless chickens? Why is Africa not uniting? Why are we not uniting and have a United States of Africa like what Gaddafi wanted? Look at Burkina Faso right now. Yes. Thomas Sankara is reawakened. In just a few months, Burkina Faso is improving.
Absolutely.
Because they've got a leader who is focused, who wants the best for his people.
And he's 34.
Yes. So at the end of the day, we need to reintrospect as a people. What is it that we have done wrong? What is it that we need to correct? And you know, before mama kesa chukutowana they are going to share somebody to harm with blood money. Yes, this is blood money. It is. It is. Let's make it a conversation for another day. But it is blood money. So at the end of the day, I think we are in a situation where we thrust ourselves into, and we create policies that benefit a few political elite.
Right.
And those who are affected don't even raise their heads to say, and then after all is said and done, we become a joking nation. We spend most of our time following socialites on Facebook and what, and creating statements like Chikuru Kufema. Chikuru Kufema is a defeatist statement. There's no way you rise up and fight. You won't go shoes order. You've already given up.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And let's come to the issue of corruption that has plagued the country for decades, literally. If lead were to get into power today, how would you tackle the issue of corruption? Because it goes beyond, say, a few individuals who are quoted in press having benefited like millions of dollars. It goes way beyond that. So how does lead tackle this issue of corruption in the country?
I believe the best way is the radical way, the Chinese way, to just behead. That is the only way we'll be able to tackle corruption. Because corruption is very deep-seated in this country. Go kumbaro chikobvunza street road vakabvisa zvima street signs chikobvunza kuti road chinonzi ningiri wanzi pay $5.
Right.
That's corruption.
Right.
But city council yakauya ikaisa saina kuti ndiwata street iwo ndoibvisa wotoswera wakagara ipapo bhozuzoti pane munhu achauya asikaziva kuti wata ndeupi unoibhadhara mari because you want to go where you want to go.
Yes, true.
I was telling some colleagues musuno wekuti kuzvipatara chaiko kwatinondochema kuti hakuna mushonga ikoko tukana uchagainvenje nesitoki mushonga inotouya but ichotorwa navanoshandako.
I can relate. It's true. It's a fact.
But kana mopopota kuti hurumende haisi kutenga mushonga munhu saka kuti hanzi inodyira paenda sei payakasungirirwa hapana kwatinoenda. So there's a lot that needs to be done, but I always continue and say zvese kuti zvichinji zvinodzokera kumicro. Chii chiri kuitika kumicro? What is happening in the house? Wife chaiye ari kutonyepa achitoita corruption kune murume wake kuti awane mimba. Murume ari kutonyepa. So
it's lie upon lie.
It's lie upon lie.
Yeah,
chibva kumicro kwacho chinosvika kumusoro, chibva kumusoro chinosvika pasi. Because when we say corruption has happened chiro kumusoro ikoko kuna anto benefit okusvika pa a particular level. Because kuzonzi tender rinzi razobuda kutoneka moka click katongori ordinary andozonzwe yake.
Yes.
Saka when we start speaking about corruption, uyu ari kuzotambidzwa uyu arikude kumhanyawo kuzaki because yandotambidzwa shoma ari pasi. Kuti aiwa kune chakachiri kuitika, no one can do that. Because akazomhanya futi achienda kuzaki kwacho vekuzaki akasvika achanzi oyakwe.
That's how bad the system is right now.
That's the truth. So tingataura zvezvecorruption tigodi. I've realized that those who back the most about corruption are the worst corrupt.
That's very true. It basically means nearly just about every Zimbabwean is corrupt.
Exactly.
We can want to sugarcoat it however we want because we haven't been caught with millions, but it's a fact we are corrupt.
True.
I have two last questions, Madam President. The first one of the last would be, it's a bit of a personal matter. Recently you were in the news as having suffered domestic violence in your household, where your husband assaulted you because you found him in a compromising position with your daughter, and then you eventually reconciled with your husband. Maybe can you shed a bit of light on what transpired and why you reconciled after the much publicized issue of violence that happened against you?
I do not discuss my personal matters with the public. It's unfortunate that friends who I confided with decided to make this a piecemeal on social media, which is wrong because it was a breach of privacy. When I speak to you as a friend confiding in you, and ndinakutenda unoisa pa social media. Chakafukidza dzimba matenga, hakuna imba isina zvayo. Vamwe vanotondiseka vachitaura zvauri kutaura, they're even going through worse things. But me, as a matter of principle, I do not discuss my marriage, or my home issues with the public. When I'm in public, let's do politics, let's do leadership, let's do national issues, I'm fine. Zvekumba kwangu ndezvekumba kwangu, zvoperera pagedhi rekupi rekumba kwangu.
Powerful, very strong. And the second last question would be, you are in the alternative, or what we normally call the opposition. Right now the opposition is in tatters, if we are to be frank. Both what we call the main opposition and perhaps the smaller alternatives, right? What would be your words to your colleagues in the alternative in order to reorganize or organize perhaps? First of all, may you address on why there are so many political parties or alternatives? Why don't you all come together and coalesce and form, say, a formidable opposition? What is the thing that is causing?
What is the problem with Zimbabweans and with multi-party democracy? Zimbabwe is a multi-party democracy.
Right.
Our constitution allows multi-party democracy.
Right.
Why do people say converge together and form a formidable? How do you form a formidable force when you've got different ideologies or interests? In the just ended elections in South Africa, they had more than 50 political parties. But we never heard South Africans saying, why are you not all converging and forming? In the States, the last election, they had more than 70 political parties, even though they eventually just talk about 2.
Yes.
But it's not only Zimbabwe that has got many political parties. Even Zambia, most African countries, maybe say for Botswana, which is a small nation. We should understand and appreciate the value of multi-party democracy and the benefits of plurality of voices in parliament and local government. A two-party binary system will continue to lead us exactly right where we are. A binary system anongodyidzana vakadaro goita madhiri mazheti zvese vachingodya vakadaro. But when we've got more voices, munganditi inini kwedu tisingabhelieve in corruption wati ngatitorei ma 40,000 tonoita noizi kuti hakuna unoiwana. We are so fixated in things that continue to oppress us. The binary political system failed us since 1999. It does not work. But journalists, the ordinary public will keep on asking, why are you saying musiri kubatana tobatana sei pazvinhu zvisingashandi? How has the binary system helped us? Some of us are now starting to open up eyes kuti tivhurawo mumaziso kuti onai problem yakaitika kubva 1999 kusvika patiri nhasi ndepekuti takatiri main opposition, but main opposition isina ideology. Kana ukabvunzwa kuti what do you remember kubva kuMDC, unonzi ZANU-PF must go. But ZANU-PF must go is not an ideology. That is why chichimwashuka. There is nothing concrete that binds people to MDC or to CCC. Munhu ari kuzana izvozvo anokuudza kuti the revolutionary spirit ndo ideology iriko, handiti? Anokuudza iye chitepo ideology yavo achikuudza kuti inini ndiri mwana wesangano. Chero munhu asina kuenda kuhondo anokuudza nyaya dzekuhondo nganga ariko. They've got something that they hold dear to yekuti chero vamunangagwa vakabva kukauya mumwe aramba chikuudza kuti indiri wezana. Politics dzenyu dzekuopposition dzekutevera munhu muchita kunge Mwari ndozoita kuti zvinhu zvimwashuke. An ideology should bind a political party. If opposition wants to exist, they should move away from strongman politics and move to institutionalized politics. Right now, vana Welsh vagara apa vagadzira a new executive. Vanhu vakuvatuka ndo vatengesi vaitawo. Saka vanhu voregedza kuita go forward nekuti Chamisa akaresigna. He resigned, everyone read his resignation letter. Saka opposition politics yotofa because one individual said another politics. Pane era. Ideology should make people work together. But where there's no shared ideology or similarities, there's no room for coalition. For the sake of kusangana. No for the agree. Because inini I know I will not be able to work with most male people in this country because they are anti-women. They are misogynistic. I am advancing women's rights. I'm advancing labor justice. Most of the politicians in this country are the employers. Because indikati mushandi wese ngaphiwe poverty data ningi salary. Uma kutofunga ndakuwana less profit. So ideology is the only thing that can unite people. But where there's no ideology,
and your message to the president and the ruling party on the current state of affairs in the country, in the economy, and how it's affecting Zimbabweans?
My message to Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa, the president of Zimbabwe, is please take some time to engage with the ordinary Zimbabweans. Talk to them. You said you've got an open door policy. Hear their concerns. Allow them to send through questions, even online, and respond to them online. You will get to understand that most of the information that you're given is actually fake. Those around you are giving you information that makes you believe that everything is under control, but nothing is under control. The people of Zimbabwe are suffering. The policy inconsistencies are affecting livelihoods. The currency volatility is affecting livelihoods. People cannot even access US dollar. People cannot even buy fuel. People cannot even balance. They're living a life with no balance. And that is the reality. You promised the people of Zimbabwe that things will be much better than what they were before. But as it stands, things are getting worse. People are suffering. And as the head of state, I think there's a time where you need to pay attention to the real struggles that the ordinary Zimbabwean is going through. There's a time when Mugabe would come back to Zimbabwe after being told he would just give a decree to airport to Jesagashitsiki. Desperate situations call for drastic measures. We're expecting drastic measures from you, Comrade President, to correct the economy. The economy should serve the interests of the Zimbabwean people. But as it stands, it is serving a few political elites, a few business elites, and the ordinary Zimbabwean is screaming. Please take some time to pay attention who are the ordinary Zimbabweans.
Right, and lastly, I had forgotten this, but I think it's quite important. You said after the current court case that is in court, that when you are suing the RBZ, you may actually approach the courts again as lead and in your personal capacity to address the issue of rentals, because rentals are quite high in Zimbabwe, particularly in Harare. And you also spoke about there being a rent board, and that Zimbabweans don't seem to know or understand their rights in regards to that, and whether the rent board has capacity to regulate rentals. Maybe may you share a bit of light in that regard?
Actually, what I was thinking, I didn't want to talk about this as of yet, because I need to approach rent board and the Minister of Housing to get to understand what really is happening. Right. Maybe after I have done that, we can be able to have that conversation, because things are spiraling out of control, and sometimes we just need to have a little bit of empathy for the suffering people in Harare particularly, who are having to pay absurd rentals, because balance 600, next month the rent 800. Yes. Yeah, life doesn't operate that way.
Yes. And finally, your message to the generality of Zimbabwe.
Hope, hope, hope. We need to keep on hoping for a better, brighter and prosperous Zimbabwe. But that better, brighter and prosperous Zimbabwe will just not come from hope. We need to see action. We need to see Zimbabweans speaking out about real things that are affecting them. Things will never be corrected as long as we have a defeatist approach to the crisis that we're facing as a nation. When we speak out we are able to raise the pertinent questions on what needs to be corrected. Let's take to task the councillors we voted for so that they make sure that water runs out of our taps. We are tired of excuses. Let's hold to account the MPs we voted for. Hold to account the ministers so that everything will start moving in the right direction. We've got a lot of people with brains in this country, underutilized brains. Let's come up with startups. Let's approach the relevant ministries for local direct investment. And I am sure that if we start being proactive, we might have a good positive story to talk about at the end of the day as Zimbabweans.
Thank you so much, Zimbabwe. There you have it. That was Linda Masarira, the president of LEAD. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode. Goodbye.